What's going on, everybody? It is time for another extended education moment, and today, here's what I want to talk to you about. It's an important thing that we hear a lot about, and it's a term that we toss around a lot. And what I want to make sure is that we understand what it really means. So we are going to be talking about social capital. Now, social capital. Is a word that, like I said, it gets tossed around a lot. And I think that people have sort of a surface level idea of what it means. But I wanted to kind of dive deep into what some of the research and some of the different theories about social capital are out there so that you can see how this applies to our BNI group and your BNI membership. And so that you can learn how to develop social capital and how to use that to your advantage. So, first of all, let's talk about the word capital. So, what does capital even mean? Capital, the definition of it in economics, is something that has no inherent value other than to produce or obtain other resources. So, like, for example, you might think of money, right? So, a lot of times in the business world, when we're talking about capital, we're talking about financial capital. I want to start a business. I need to, get some money to buy the resources that I need, or I need to find an investor that has capital that they can invest in my business or my business idea. So financial capital is a really common thing that we think about. Another thing would be, there's intellectual capital, right? So if you have like a really big idea or something like that, then that's your intellectual capital. Your process for doing something, your technology, maybe a piece of like a system or a technique for doing something that's unique from everybody else. So that might be another form of capital. And so, in a networking group, of course, we're interested in social capital. And so, what does that mean? Basically, what social capital is it's the sum of your positive relationships that increase your ability to leverage these relationships for gain. Now, when I say that they're positive, there's no such thing as like really negative social capital. Just the same as there's no such thing as like you know a negative $2 bill, right? So all dollar bills have value, just like all relationships have some sort of value. Now, certainly, you can increase and decrease in the amount of value the relationship has, but so it's important to understand that there's kind of a positive bent to this idea of social capital, and you've got it or you don't. The other thing about social capital that's kind of unique is, or kind of different than like financial capital, for example, is let's say that you're starting a business and I'm starting a business, and we both want to use the same pool of capital. There's only so much that you could use and only so much that I could use. And so it's not something that we can really share equally. Well, social capital is kind of unique because you can develop or use social capital and it actually increases as you use it. And so it's this idea of becoming more connected and there's more reciprocity, more trust. And so developing social capital is something that increases as you use it, which is sort of unique. So there's a couple concepts that we want to look at whenever it comes to social capital. One idea is the idea of bonding, and the other idea is bridging. And this is not stuff that I came up with. These are concepts that are developed by people who are much smarter than I am and who have looked into this a lot more. If you really are interested in looking at more, look at the works of a guy named Robert Putnam, and he's written a lot of good things. Like one really interesting book that he's written is called "Bowling Alone," and it explores kind of what happens to people like when they age and they're aging by themselves, and what are some of the ramifications of something like that. And he's kind of discovered some interesting factoids about connectedness and social capital. Like, for example, for every 10 minutes of commute that you have, you decrease your social capital. And so, maybe finding ways to get out of the car more, shorten your commute, those types of things. Maybe carpool would increase your social capital. Another thing too is watching TV decreases your social capital, and so that's a pretty interesting fact. And so then there's these ideas that he came up with of bonding and bridging. So bonding is really focused on like a group. So, for example, let's pretend like this is a village, right? So a few features of bonding is it's about the amount of cohesiveness that you have in the group, right? So usually it's a group that deals with some sort of proximity, like a village. A village is a village because all the huts are near each other. And so people work together. They build on commonalities, like maybe they're the same ethnicity. They certainly live in the same village. Maybe they have a similar resource that they're drawing on, like maybe we like to pick apples or something like that. And so we all have this too. If you look at the social groups that you're a part of, maybe you're a part of a family, and that commonality is, that family relationship. Or maybe you go to a church and you have a shared belief and you bond over that belief. Or maybe your best friend from college. Maybe it's that shared experience of being in the same classes, or you really like your alma mater, or you're really into the football team, or whatever it is. So it's these commonalities that you build that cause you to bond. And I think that this is something that we all intuitively understand because everybody has some of these bonds. Now, with bonding, what we're really doing is we are focusing inward, right? We're looking at our village and we're looking at ways that we have things in common. We're looking at ways to improve the village. Like, so maybe we went and we developed this community fire pit together as a way to support each other. And the closer we are in proximity, like the tighter those bonds are. And so something like a fire pit is a great way to like increase that bonding and that kind of glue of our social network, our social capital there. One of the things that's been found is that there's like a decrease in things like group meetings and club meetings and family dinners and stuff like that. And there's some concern over what this does to the connectedness and the bonding of those groups. So whenever you look at bonding social capital, the focus here is getting by, right? So there are some societal norms. There's trust, there's support, there's collaboration. Certainly, we can see this in our BNI group, right? There's certain things that if you're doing and you're doing them on a regular basis, then you are considered a good member of the group, right? So we have some norms, and so getting by is like adhering to those norms and doing all the things. So, for example, showing up on time, right? That's a group norm. It's an expectation that we have of each other. Whenever we're doing our open networking at the beginning, like one of the norms of our group is that everybody stands up and you're moving around and you're welcoming people. And so those types of things, as we do them individually, we become more bonded to the group, and we're able to get by, which is kind of a good thing. And so this can be nice to be a part of a really strong group like this because it feels safe. It feels like you're supported, and certainly you are. Okay. There's also some negatives though that come along with this bonding type of social capital. As you can see, it's fairly exclusive, right? There's just this village here. So if somebody wandered into our village one day, we would all look at that person strangely because, who are they and do they understand our social norms and, things like that. So that's one thing is it's very exclusive. It tends to be elitist. It could be biased. You get narrow minded. All the information in the group, when information is important in a social network, all the information that's being passed is in this closed system. And so that's one of the drawbacks of this bonding thing. Now, it's not that bonding is all bad. It's really good. And it's actually really important to our BNI group. We want to develop our know, like, and trust. We want to know the people in the group, and we want to understand what are their motivations, their goals. We want to trust them. We want them to be trusted by us because that is very important for how we function. Okay. So again, our other, whoops, let's see. Haha, there we go. So then the other element of social networking, forgive my crazy looking N there, is bridging. So bridging is like, let's say that we have our village here, and there's one member of the village who actually gets brave and decides that they're going to wander until they find another village, right? And so this other village here maybe has some other resources that ours doesn't. And so that individual, by doing some bridging here, is able to then have access to the resources of the other village. Like, see, maybe they've got fish, right? And so bridging is when you're reaching across different groups, and it might be that that there are people that are different than you, right? So they have different skills, different knowledge, different information, different backgrounds, and so this kind of outward look, this bridging, is really what provides us with more opportunities in life and socially, is the ability to reach out and connect to other groups of people that might not be like us, or part of our own little village there. And so one might go, and so this would increase your social capital, right? If you had this relationship with another village, and like maybe if you had a relationship with another village still, right, then you have a greater increase of your social capital. And you might even have the ability to connect multiple groups, which is big. And maybe, oh, this group up here, they have some sheep. And so, well, let's see, maybe somebody else in the network has access to that village, and they're able to then make it so that we can bring that resource into our group, right? So it's a two-way kind of flow of resources in and out of these groups. And so that's a really big deal. Maybe we have somebody in the group that really needs access to a cyber truck, right? A Tesla cyber truck, those really ugly looking trucks right there. And so uh, it would be, you would be really valuable, or you would have a lot of social capital if you were the one that could bridge that gap and bring access to that group. So these ties that I'm showing, these little dotted lines, these tend to be weaker connections, and weaker connections shouldn't be interpreted as something that's bad, though. A weaker connection can actually be a really good thing. It means that these are not obligatory relationships. They're more casual, and they're also more intentional. And so your connection to, say, a village that has sheep could be severed, and there's very few social ramifications that come with that because you're not really tightly bonded to them. One of the advantages is that it gives you a lot more mobility, and these weaker bonds, they kind of come and they go. But what's nice is that it always allows for the flow of information and resources and knowledge and skills into a group that you're more tightly bonded to. Think about your family, right? So your family, because of the different members in it, they have access to things that they otherwise wouldn't be able to reach because of the people that they're not as close to, right? So maybe Jimmy goes to school, and his friends at school offer him certain opportunities, and it makes opportunities for the family. And maybe mom's got a job, and her job offers certain opportunities for the family, and you're always the family, right? And you're always close, and you're always bonded, and you're never as close to those other people, but it serves everybody when you have both these bonding and bridging relationships. And so these bridging relationships, the other thing about them is that they're based on maybe some shared interests or goals, even though you have a contrasting social identity. So, like maybe the folks with the Cybertruck here, they really value heat, and so do the people with fire, right? So you have that shared like goal, but you're part of different villages, and so that's fine, and that's going to foster some connectivity there. Now, all that being said, let's kind of sweep all this out of the way. Um, let's think about your social capital. What do you have, and where are you focused? So when you show up to BNI, are you looking at that room, and are you thinking about just what's going on inside of that room? Because if you're only focused in and trying to bond with the people in there, then your value is really limited to the group. I can't think of a nicer way to say that, but you're limiting your value because all you can do is really refer other people in the group, or you can become close to other people in the group, but you're not really bringing any resource in that we don't already have. And so we're all in BNI because we have this commonality. We have this desire to work on our businesses, or we have businesses, and so in that way it's a support group. But this is not just for support. That's not why any of us get or join the group, is to just get some support. The reason that we join the group is because we want access. We want access to people who need our products and services. We want access to people that have products and services that people that we service could use. And so that access is really built on these bridging relationships. And so, my challenge to you is going to be to maybe sit down with a piece of paper and like just make a circle and write down a group that you're in, right? And then make another circle and write down another group that you're in. It might be your family, your church, your company that you work for, your alma mater. It could be your neighborhood, could be based on the school that your kids go to, or your wine club, or whatever it is. Just write down all those little circles, and just kind of play around with it. Like maybe write some notes about how bonded you feel to that group. Like, where do you really find your identity? And you'll probably only find it in just a few places that you're really strongly tied to. And the rest of them are maybe weaker connections. And maybe you can kind of draw a map or a diagram of what some of your social capital looks like. The value of that would be that that is what you bring to the group. And so when you're aware of what your social capital is, the resources that you have to bring to bear for the group, then it makes it easier to use that social capital. Remember, capital is something that has no inherent value other than to produce or obtain resources. And so these relationships that you have, the strong relationships and the weaker relationships, they have value because they can bring other things into your life. And maybe that's happiness, maybe it's love, maybe it's an opportunity to go out and to do something, to travel, or whatever it is. That's what social capital is. It's those relationships and what it allows you to do. Now, putting a little bit of a giver's gain spin on that, think about your social capital that you have, and what about your social capital, or what aspects of your social capital is compatible with the goals of your fellow BNI members. What is it in your social capital, your social network, that can satisfy a need that you hear from another person? Because if you want to be bonded to that person and you want some reciprocity and you want to develop that relationship, if you can bring your social resources to bear on their behalf, they're probably going to do the same for you. And if you find that you're having trouble, if you find you're having no trouble fitting in with a group, but you are having trouble kind of breaking out of the group and reaching out and getting access to some of those other resources, then you might want to maybe talk to a more connected member, somebody who you see as a great bridger, and find out, what do you do. You might want to go out and join a new group, make a new friend, try a new hobby, something that's going to expand your horizons and start bridging. The more contact you make, the more your social capital grows, and that's pretty much an automatic thing. It's about showing up. It's about building those relationships, and that helps you become a much more valuable member of the group. So I hope that all this has made some sense and been helpful. Think about your social capital, and not just what you have, but how do you grow it? Like, how do you grow a larger network? How do you build stronger bonds? The two things aren't really mutually exclusive, although they can seem like it, but they just really both need to be serviced. So that's it for today. Sorry that we ended up on this weird looking box. I don't know what I was drawing there, but let me just leave you with this, okay? It's a smiley face. Have a good one.